Hello, everybody, and welcome to the NextGen Planners podcast. My name is Dan, and I'm the head of community experience here at NextGen Planners. And today, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined all the way from Austin, Texas, believe it or not, by Emily Binder. How are you doing today, Emily?
Hey Dan, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, I'm really, really good. It's late afternoon here, and it's late morning in the US, where you are, anyways. So I must say a big thank you for coming on the show today. It's really nice to have you here. And we're going to be talking about something which we've actually never talked about on the podcast before as well. So it should be a really, really good conversation. So, for anyone who doesn't know, Emily, she is the founder of Wealth Voice, which is a voice marketing tool in the United States, and she works with financial planners. So, as we do with everyone, Emily, just to kick things off a little bit and just to kind of give a bit of context, can you tell us a bit about what you get up to on a daily basis and what the average day looks like to you?
Sure. Actually, we are international. We're global, Dan. And
There you go.
that's important because I think the whole idea of sharing your voice shouldn't be limited, whether it's just a podcast or you're using voice assistants. I'll mute mine here. So, Wealth Voice is a platform that lets you share your voice. We started out as an Alexa tool so that you can create, we call it a hands-free homepage. This lets you talk about your firm or your brand or yourself and also important topics. But each of these has a hands-free phrase that people can ask 20,000 types of devices. Tell me about Dan. Tell me about NextGen planners. And there's a feature called Broadcasts, which is really a mini podcast. You can share quick updates. You could do an emergency broadcast. You could do Soulful Sundays. It's just a great way to share clips and short bites of your voice that's accessible everywhere for everyone.
Mm-hmm. It's really good. And it's something that I would imagine that the people in the audience might not have heard of in the past, or they certainly will have heard of voice marketing. But can you just kind of take us through like the actual work that you do with let's just say financial planners, for instance? Like how does this help them kind of grow their audience and stuff?
It's really another marketing tool. So with Wealth Voice, we're giving you an easy way to share your voice in more places. It makes your podcast come alive. It's not just a one-to-one consumption route. It's a little more interactive and becomes a conversation. So there's that, but we also offer a consultative element, which is how does this fit into the entire marketing orchestra? Like this is an instrument. It's not a silo. It plays with all the other pieces. And I do consulting, I do speaking. So Wealth Voice is really a product that was an answer to a need that I saw among advisors, but also we have B2B, we have vendors, we have other SaaS tools that use Wealth Voice. It helps you reach your audience just like any other marketing tool, like social media or email. It's another channel where you can do that.
Yeah, brilliant. Good stuff. So I think before we get started, it will be good because, like we said, in the audience, there will be people who've never heard of it. And I must admit, before our conversations, Emily, I was a bit kind of not really sure what it was. So it's a good opportunity now to obviously to kind of just cover what it actually means. So as if you were explaining it, let's just say you're explaining it to an alien or someone from the 17th century, and they didn't know anything at all about this. Like, what does voice marketing do and how does it help people?
I break it into 3 areas. So the first is recorded audio, podcasts, anything where you have recorded sound or voice that is reaching your audience. It could be on hold music on your phone. It could be executive walk-on music. It could be a sonic logo, an audio mark like the Netflix. But that's, I think, under the umbrella of the recorded audio. Most people, it's podcasts. That's the simplest way to think about it. Then there is sonic branding, like I mentioned with audio marks. And these are just sounds or music that are the equivalent of a visual logo, but they're auditory. And they should be unique to your brand. Just like you wouldn't copy someone else's logo, you wouldn't want to have the same sound as somebody else. Anywhere sound appears. That could be inside of an app. That could be when a washing machine turns on. That could be podcast intro music, YouTube video music, all of these things. And then the third section or area of voice marketing is voice experiences, mostly living on voice assistants like, I'll just say Lexi so I don't set off anyone's devices, Alexa, Google, Siri, anytime that someone can interact inside of an app, like in Capital One or any voice assistant chatbot that has that audio component, that's a voice experience. And that's the third leg of this stool of voice marketing.
Yeah, it really it makes sense when you kind of break it up a little bit more like that, because I think, like you said, the majority of people, when they think of voice, they rush to something which is quite paradoxical that we're doing right now, which is the podcast area, of course, and that is a very kind of, we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but that is a very kind of, it's a very concentrated area. I mean, there is a lot of jokes, isn't there, about, you know, which financial planners don't have podcasts nowadays and all that kind of stuff. And it
Right,
is,
right.
there is a lot of podcasts out there. I think that's why most people think about it. But this is a brand new area, and that's why I'm so excited about it, and that's why you're so excited about it, is because, you know, this is something that is completely new to a lot of people. And
You
it's
know,
really
on that
good.
note, Dan, I think there was a stat that I found recently. Michael Kitts has put this out, and it was a 2022 advisor podcast usage study from the Kitts report. And there was a high correlation between what are considered high growth advisory firms and
Mm,
firms who have a podcast or do a podcast or participate in voice marketing.
of
So
course.
he has this broken. I'll send you this graphic. You could put it in the show notes, but I found it kind of
Yeah.
fascinating. It's not to say podcasts necessarily make you more successful, but the people who are successful tend to also create podcasts. So there's a there, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't we can't really say if there is a link between them, can we? But I mean, just looking at the statistics alone, it would seem to make sense that people who spend more time, you know, delivering great content and putting themselves out there are obviously more successful. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't disagree with those results at all. Absolutely not. Um, so on that note, actually, because, you know, our audience are financial planners and people who work in the arena of financial planning. I'm just trying to think, like, how can, because we've already spoken a little bit about how, you know, you think it can help uh, offline, but if we could get that out in the open now, like, how do you think this can actually help financial planners market themselves? Like, what is this going to bring them in terms of their marketing arsenal?
Well, just as technology continues advancing and you have to grow with it because people are getting information in different places. It's like, are you in the yellow pages 40 years ago? Great. And if you're an A or a B, even better. But now that's irrelevant. So when you look at where attention has shifted, like share of whether it's eyeballs or ears, consumption is moving to streaming audio faster than ever. There was a 400% increase in the amount of streaming audio heard through smart speakers in 2022 over 2021, if I have that correct. I'll link you to the stat for the show notes too. But the point is, the consumption habits always evolve and change as technology gets better and moves to different devices or mediums. And so if you're not there, you're inaudible or invisible. It's just the next evolution of people are getting things by voice because more of the devices we interact with on a daily basis are voice activated. You have to adapt to that. But the cool thing about it is it's not just, okay, I've moved to TikTok or I've done SEO on my blog, like I'm keeping up with the times. The thing that's especially cool about voice is that neurologically, it will connect with somebody on an emotional level much faster than any other medium or sense, like visual. The other ones aren't as applicable, like kinesthetic to marketing, but you process sound 10 times faster than the blink of an eye. Music, emotion, memory live in the same part of the brain. So when you hear someone's voice, because we're wired for storytelling around a campfire, the emotional connection happens faster and burrows into their subconscious more effectively than any other medium. Video is great too because it does contain that voice, but comparing it to text, it's so thin and emotionless. It's great in ways. I'm not saying don't write, but you're going to have a shortcut to that connection. And from a branding and marketing standpoint, all these purchase decisions are emotionally driven. They're logically driven later, like an afterthought. You know, like Daniel Crosby talks about this. He's like, we decide based on emotion, then we rationalize it. Here's why I did that. It was just a sensible investment. No, it's because I felt good about that guy. I liked his voice. I heard his podcast. He's likable and trustworthy.
Yeah, that is true. I guess, like, as well, because we've seen the rise of, I mean, not so much, not as fast as perhaps people thought it, but things like Twitter Spaces and stuff like that. Where, and oh, what was the one that came to that really like pushed up during the
Oh,
pandemic? Where
Clubhouse.
Clubhouse, for
Yep.
instance. I mean, it's not as big anymore as people thought it was going to be, but like, it's true. Like, there is clearly a demand for this type of thing of hearing someone's voice, and if someone sounds like they sounds like they're really nice because just because of their voice, then it obviously makes sense from a marketing perspective as well.
And the sound of the voice is so key. You know, that's something else that I've been beginning to offer, which is voice coaching. So, how do you improve the sound of your voice? The reason this is so important is we make a snap judgment on somebody's competence, confidence, authority by hearing a single word. And they've done a study. I was so fascinated by this. If you listen to a single word or a full sentence from somebody's voice and you like taking the survey, I think they sound smart, they sound likable, they sound confident. The amount of information you get from a single word is the same as from a full sentence. So
It's
if I say the
crazy.
word investing, you hear the way I say that, and you kind of have these assumptions in your brain emotionally in split second from that. So it's this really powerful medium, and everybody can harness it. It's easier than ever to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got me thinking now about my voice, because a lot of people, I think you probably might have something to say on this as well. But like, the majority of people, when they think of hearing themselves back, they cringe. And I don't
Yep.
necessarily think, I don't know if that's because of their voice or because of their unwillingness to be in the public eye, for instance. I don't necessarily think it's a problem with their voice. It's more of, I don't want to hear myself because I'm out there in public saying things that I wouldn't say to myself.
Right. It's a mixture of the two. So when you hear your voice recorded, let's say I did a voice memo and then played it back, if you're not used to hearing your own voice, it will sound foreign because you've experienced hearing your own voice with it echoing and rattling inside of your own skull. So the
Mhm.
vibrations, the actual sound of it is a little different when it's out in the air. Once you get used to it, though, like I've been listening to my own voice when I listen to my podcast, and I know, okay, that's me. It's fine. And I didn't
Yeah.
like it at first, interestingly enough. And now I think, okay, I like my voice. There's a lot you can do with breath. Like a lot of people will start speaking right after they've inhaled, but it's actually ideal to exhale maybe 25% of the air and then begin. So like now I start talking instead of
Mhm.
now I start talking because it's too much air pushing through it. There's all these little tips like that. There's videos on YouTube you can find. So you'll start to like the sound of your voice more when you master it and, play with volume, play with pauses, play with the resonance or the inflection and have a little more of a melody to it.
Yeah.
Because monotone, wait, maybe you don't like the sound of your voice because it's in a monotone. And we tend to speak in a monotone when we're more nervous, but it's harder to listen to and it's actually perceived as less confident and not as pleasant to listen to. So that's something that everybody can work on pretty easily.
Yeah, definitely. I think that you've actually done a really good job. I mean, I didn't need any convincing because, I hear my voice all the time. But certainly, especially the point about like you can tell a lot about someone just from their voice. Um, you know, Before, I think people would have thought that this area of voice marketing is perhaps not something for them. But this is really a way to get personal with your audience, and it's a really is a way to like to get on the same kind of terms as them, on the same level as them. Rather, like you said, because you can't really demonstrate your personality through text. Like the most beautiful writers in the world, and it's still just not ultimately them. Whereas
Right.
someone's voice is them. Like someone's voice, it's there. You can identify someone from their voice.
Right. There's really no misinterpretation possible unless somebody is speaking in a way that's confusing. If you have a very dry sense of humor and you don't use inflection to imply I'm being sarcastic or that's a
Mhm.
joke, then there's a misinterpretation possibility. But when you're reading text, this is why books can be interpreted. Like you go to a book group, everybody felt or thought this meant something different because of the theater of the mind, which is a beautiful thing. There's less left up to question when it's this is my voice, this is how I meant it. The reason we use emojis rampantly and are so addicted to them is that we're trying to insert body language into what is a very thin medium, which is text based communication. And
Yeah,
body language, the sound of the voice, these account for, I believe it's over 70% of the impression somebody gets from a conversation.
yeah,
It's not the true words themselves, but that's all you get when you're reading text.
yeah. And I'm just thinking about all the emails and stuff that have been sent in the past that, on the face of it, look really kind of blunt and quite rude, whereas for some people that's just the way that they type, but it's not the way that they talk. Once you talk to them, they're completely different. They're the most
Yep.
bubbly, they've got the most amazing voice in the world, and they use inflections, and like you were saying, but on email they're completely different. And
And
I know actually, like, I a lot of people I speak to are exactly like that, and I've never really thought about this before.
it's also generational. I mean, if I look at the way my mom writes business emails, and she's had her consulting firm for decades, and she's a boomer, her entire tone and the way that she writes, because of how she grew up and was taught this is a business professional tone of voice, it feels and reads colder now because things have gotten less formal. And even if you look at what does an exclamation point really mean, it used to mean exclamation, and now it actually indicates sincerity. It's very different.
Yeah, it does. And also, when you think of certain other punctuation marks, like question marks, for instance, they used to be used to ask a question, whereas now they're almost used, they can be used in a pretty arsey way of saying, well, I thought this was done, question mark.
Right.
And like that, for instance, there, like if you send that to someone, it looks horrible. And it's meant, I think it is meant with a kind of pushy sense, but it was never
Yeah.
intended to be like that as a punctuation mark.
I know it evolves, and the meanings, like LOL in all caps or in all lowercase, mean two very different things.
Yeah. That's true, actually. That's crazy. Oh my god, we're gonna get off track here by
Yeah.
going down this route, but I think you've certainly kind of sold me, and I probably in the audience, of how powerful voice marketing is. We've seen it, but it's nice to actually summarize it and say why it's so popular, because people are voices. I think that's what we can pull from that. And the voice market, I think last time we spoke, actually, or maybe not last time, but certainly a time where we've spoken, I think you've said that it's like the voice market is the fastest growing, or one of the fastest growing markets in history. Like when we think of things like Lexi, and I'm saying it there, by the way, to not set everyone's thing off, like Google, when we think of, Apple Home, all that kind of stuff, and Siri. Um, but do you think it's like actually here to stay? Or I know what you're going to say. You're going to say it is here to stay, but can you see the reasoning behind why some people may think it is a fad, and where do you think it's going to get to as well?
Sure, everything might be a fad. Like TikTok might be a fad. Is it
Yeah.
a trend or a fad, right? So I would
Yeah.
say with voice, it's not going anywhere. We've seen it becoming baked into apps, devices. Even if you look at like Spotify now has their own voice assistant. So you have the big ones. We have Lexi, Google, Siri. These are the dominant players as it comes to usage. But a lot of companies are working on their own voice assistants, like BBC. Capital One Eno is one of the first ones. So it's going to evolve into that, and there will be a lot more specialization of what these assistants can do. But the key is that if you look when the first Echo came out, and this is the quintessential original smart speaker, the big black cylinder, 2014, and it was the fastest adopted consumer device of all time for any tech. Go back to the radio, the television, the computer, the smartphone. These all increase the adoption rate, but nothing was as fast adoption as smart speakers. Under 5 years, roughly 50% of the population has one. It's the number one selling device for, I believe, 3 years in a row on Black Friday, Cyber Monday. This past Thanksgiving season in the US, Echo Dot, Fire TV Stick, Apple AirPods, top 3 selling devices, record sales numbers. So everyone has these in their house. The thing about it is, if it's that fast growing in the technology, the hardware is adopted, what happens with the software or the user experience or the content that's available there? That's what Wealth Voice is about. It's giving you the picks and shovels to be present in this very fast growing, available, really blue ocean. Everyone has this on their kitchen countertop, but there's not that much content there yet. It's not very competitive yet, like the rest of the internet. So in that sense, yes, I think no, it's not. It's not a fad. It's not going to go away. It's going to morph and evolve. But it's voice. We've been speaking forever. The internet itself is in a computerese, and now it's finally becoming more of a human language when it becomes a voice is a channel that you can interact with.
Yeah. It's really interesting. Oh, I've got an alarm going off. That was an alarm to go for a run as well.
I'm glad
So,
it wasn't
but
me. You need to go for a run because you're just done.
yeah, no, I'd much rather be doing this. Believe me. But yeah, I think it's true. Like it's true that everyone's got. There's nothing else really that I can think of where everyone has got one, but not everyone is using it to market. If you know what I mean. Like your phone, for instance, like everyone's got a phone. Well, the majority of people have a phone, and all good marketers are now targeting phones and stuff like that. Whereas, I think you would probably agree that not all marketers are doing voice marketing. Like not all people are focusing on this as an area, and the amount of opportunity there is huge. I think you said again in one of our previous calls, you said that like Amazon is the third biggest search engine,
Right, right.
and Chat GPT is probably going to come up there soon as well. That's another conversation for
That's
another
so
podcast.
exciting. It's a whole can of worms too. But
Yeah, but it's
yeah,
so weird that like it's just it's sat there waiting to be harnessed, and like you said, you're trying to fill that gap. It's just that we need to kind of
mm.
figure out how we're going to use it.
The other thing, Dan, is that I think I've done a poor job of focusing too much on the smart speaker, but that's just one of the devices. That's really the training wheels of voice to let people wrap their minds around, oh, this is a computer I can talk to. I need a special round speaker, but you can do this on your laptop. You can do this on your smartphone. You can do it to your TV remote. And actually, most of the highest use cases, like the people that are power users of voice, tend to do it in the car because the voice assistant is baked into like BMW, Jeep Grand Cherokee. So that's a
Yeah,
major use case. And the key is if your hands are busy, you're cooking, you're holding a baby, you're driving, you should be only using your voice. Like we should not be tap, type, and swiping in those cases.
yeah,
So yeah, I think it's here to stay for sure, and it will evolve. It's definitely a big opportunity. But the iPhone, the smartphone, the Android, whatever you have, 90% of iPhone users have the Amazon shopping app on their phone. And if you're an iPhone user, it's a high correlation with also being an Amazon Prime member. I forget the stats, but it's like if you have a credit card and a medium IQ, you have Amazon Prime, it just makes sense. Amazon Prime, Amazon Shopping have Alexa baked in. It's a little blue icon in the bottom, like it's there. You don't need a smart speaker for it. So
yeah,
that's pretty key as far as it's available to everybody.
yeah. And so, where do you think we're going then? So, a lot of this is habits, I think, isn't it? Is that people almost need to get into the habit of actually, like you said before, when they are cooking or when they are holding a baby, whatever, they need to use their voice. I don't particularly think we're in that habit just yet, or a lot of people still aren't. So like if we think about the future, let's just say 10 years time, do you think that a lot more people will have got into that habit by then, and where do you think this area will be by then?
Yes. And if you look at kids today, like 3-year-olds, 6-year-olds, they always ask the voice assistant a question. Like they don't walk to the library and look it up like I did. My mom said, get a dictionary. You want to know what that word means? It's so much easier. They talk to Lexi or whichever, Apple or Google. It's very natural for kids. Just like when the iPad came out and people said, look at a 3-year-old hand. They did this in like a foreign country. They handed the 3-year-old the iPad and they immediately were, it's intuitive to use it. Voice is even more so. So you have kids coming up that have grown up with these devices. They'll be talking to it, asking for information. And the thing that I see happening, it'll be sooner than 10 years, but it will become more predictive and the user experience will get even more natural. Because today, you have to, from a marketing perspective, let people know it's there, tell them how to get it, what it is, how to use it. And there are notifications. So there is a push. Like if you drop a wealth voice, the clients that have enabled it will get, you have an update from your advisor, and they can decide if they want to hear it. It's not
Yeah,
interruptive or obnoxious. You have to be careful with that when it comes to voice. So it's just another way to get the content. I think we're so saturated with screens, social media feed, email inbox. It's a lovely break to have. I don't have to touch it. I could just ask, and if I'm done, I'll say stop.
yeah. And it's a bit similar to things like voice notes, for instance. Like a lot of people are sending those now rather than sending WhatsApp messages, for instance. And I was always a bit of a kind of late adopter to this, but like it really does, when you just cannot be bothered to type out a big long message, you kind of kill two birds. I don't know if you can say that anymore. Yeah, you, what is it now? You feed two birds with one stone,
Oh
because
yeah.
you get your voice across, which of course we know is really personal, and it also saves you time and having to type as well. So
Let me
if
ask
you
a
think about it from
question.
those angles, go on, carry
So
on.
etiquette wise, and maybe this is different in the UK. What is too long for a voice note, a voice memo. If I send somebody a 4-minute voice, is that a podcast? Is that, what
Yeah.
do you think?
I think probably less than a minute. I
Yeah.
would keep my voice memos too. Otherwise, I'm just rambling on. Like most people can get what they want to say out of the way within a minute.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't know. I haven't really looked into the data around that, but
No,
just
I
from an
think I
etiquette
wanted
perspective,
your perspective on it. I think when somebody sends me one and it's 2.5 or 3 minutes long, it's a little too much.
yeah.
And I think if you go back and redo it, second take, you'll make it shorter.
Yeah, because there's a lot of so yeah.
Um,
Let me know what you think of that, and like you could literally summarize that in 3 seconds, couldn't you? And so, yeah, I get what you're saying. But it's interesting. A lot of this stuff is kind of tying together and is on the rise. So, yeah, I would agree with you. It's not a fad as well. Um, let's kind of move away from voice marketing a little bit. Of course, we can come back to it later on if you want to, but you're also a specialist in helping financial service firms with obviously podcasts, but also with social media, digital content creation as well, which again is a huge part of the modern marketer's arsenal. Anyone who comes to me as a modern marketer nowadays and says that they don't think that social media is big, you can't take them seriously. Like if I was starting a financial planning business tomorrow, social media would be the first thing that you have to touch. But what are the biggest tips that you would give our audience? Because nobody cares what I think, but what tips would you give our audience on, firstly, on growing an audience, but also then creating content and good content for that audience as well? And again, this is probably another podcast in itself, but maybe just a quick summary of what you think.
This is such a great question. Actually, when I was at Future Proof, this was the big question for our panel. So how do you do marketing? Do you do social media? Where do you start? How do you do all of it? It's overwhelming. I would say you need to figure out what comes naturally to you and is easy and fun to do. If it's forcing, like, oh gosh, I have to go do my podcast and I hate the sound of my voice, it might not be for you, but maybe you like blogging. The key though is to be strategic with it and be consistent and have like, okay, I'm going to put this content out there, and you don't want to approach it like this is a Coke machine. If I put in $1, my ROI is this, because that's not what content marketing, it's not advertising. It's not a PPC ad. It builds over time. It has a snowball effect, and you're building equity in the brand, trust, relationships, and the perception that somebody has of your subject matter expertise because you're in their feed, you're sharing valuable content. Also, I think some people wonder, so do I promote myself? Do I sell, or do I just share information for free? I'm giving it away for free. That's fine. Have an abundance mindset. That's what everything is nowadays, because all the information is freely available somewhere on the internet. What you can do if you're the Sherpa, you're the guide, the Yoda, right? So it's like story, what's it called? Story
brand. Yeah.
Story brand. That's it. I think about that all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, 6 gives for every 1 ask, or maybe 8 gives for every 1 ask. And then people are so happy to do business with you because you've provided the value, you've demonstrated the expertise. Specifically to answer your question, does that mean, are you supposed to tweet? Are you supposed to blog? Do you do a podcast? Do whatever works and is easy to get into the flow of what your marketing calendar, your daily schedule already is, but you can't be silent. And also I would say, just from a kind of tactical perspective, if you were starting a new brand, a new firm, go claim your handle everywhere, because you may in a year decide, I do want to get on TikTok. I was late to TikTok. I just started like, okay, I get it. This is really powerful. But you don't want to have that inconsistency of like 6 years later, I decided to finally make a Twitter account and nothing anywhere near my handle was available by then. Oh shoot, because it just makes things messy. So
yeah, it's true.
Kind of set yourself up to have the option to do any of them, and then start with just one. Start with, like, let's say you're doing a podcast, put it on YouTube, clip it, put those clips on social, tag the guests, repurpose the old content. Don't let it die on the vine. This is a mistake I see all the time. You spend so much energy making these great podcast episodes, conversations. You promote them for 5 days and you move on to the next one. It's gone.
Yep.
It doesn't live on. But the content can be evergreen. So go back and mine what you already did, right? That's just efficient.
Yeah, that is so true. And I think actually you've given me a bit of a kick up the bum there, because we're literally sitting on 178 episodes
It
and we
happens
do
to
exactly what
everybody.
you say. And you are so you're so thinking of, okay, well, what's the next one, what's the next one, whereas you forget that you've got amazing content. Like, I'm not, this will sound rude, Emily, but eventually this podcast will just be in the past. And
But
you know
Dan,
and
I will promote it in 8 months. I
yeah,
will,
this
like, you can use a scheduling tool. Like, there's one called lately.ai, very cool. There's
yeah,
Buffer, Hootsuite, whatever you want. And they're free
yeah,
mostly. When you do a post, let's say, check out this episode with Dan and Emily. We're talking about voice, how to improve your breath, how to use a smart speaker. Copy and paste the whole thing and have it go out again in 4 months, in 6 months at random intervals. Some of the tools
yeah.
will do that for you automatically. Then you don't have to think about it.
Yeah, it's super duper simple. I want to come back to what you were saying about ROI and that kind of analytical results based thing, because that's one of the frustrations with social media and with content for a lot of people, is it's too slow, and it takes a while to build up an audience. It takes a while to get anything from it, and things like that. One of the best examples I have of this is when like, people say to me, for instance, with stuff that I put out there, they'll say to me, oh yeah, I saw that video that you did like 3 weeks ago. They hadn't liked it, they hadn't shared it, they hadn't commented on it or anything like that, but they had seen my face. And that, you cannot measure something like that. There's just no way to measure something like that. So it does have an impact, even though it's slower and it's not as kind of data driven as perhaps other things like PPC and stuff are, like you said. It definitely does leave an impact on your audience, like 100%.
Right. I have to be careful when I say don't worry about the ROI, because a lot of the
No.
people I talk to are quantitatively minded. And as a marketer, you have to think, is what am I investing, whether it's time or money? There is an ROI. Part of the ROI is if you don't do it, you have no opportunity to reap the benefits. You will fall behind everyone that is doing it. And when I say do it, I mean content marketing in whatever form that is for you. The ROI, though, it's a little more. I guess you could say the analogy would be hard skills and soft skills. This is like your soft skill of marketing,
Yeah.
because the way that tracking works today, sure, it's better than Nielsen families, what they would say millions tuned into the Super Bowl in 1987. How do you know how many people tuned in? You took a
Yeah.
representative sample and you surveyed these Nielsen households. Things are certainly better from a tracking perspective now, but we still have what's called the last click attribution model for the
Yeah.
most part, meaning if you look at your analytics and you say this person booked a call with me through organic search, okay, I doubt that they found out about you just through the ether and knew the name of your brand. They had never seen anything about you. They heard you on a podcast, they saw your tweet 4 months ago, then they googled you yesterday.
Yeah.
So does Google organic search get the credit for that click, that conversion? Oftentimes, yes. That's why when you do all of this marketing, you have to have a little bit of a, I guess, a more open mind, or a blurrier lens. It's not so rigid, and it's not a scalpel of where did they hear about me exactly. You can ask them, but being in all these places forms the impression of the brand, eventually makes them like you, trust you, want to work with you.
Yeah. No, it's so true, and it does apply to financial planners as well. I think, like you said, you can, in the UK, for instance, people will go to networking events, people will go to lots of different events in their local area, but then they'll get a contact form on their website and they'll think, oh well, my website's just got me a lead there. The website hasn't got you the lead. They're going to the everything else, like you just said, has actually got you the lead, and that's what you just described there, which is last touch. It's good. We're getting quite marketing jargony here, aren't we? Maybe
That's
we should.
that's okay. I think people want to know.
No, they do.
But
Yeah, yeah,
the
that's
thing
true.
you mentioned, though, about you said somebody saw your video 3 weeks ago and they remembered it. This happens to me a lot, where someone's like, I saw your post. I liked which one?
Yeah,
I saw your video. Do you mean the podcast or the YouTube short or the tick? They don't remember what it was exactly. They just remember how they felt.
yeah. And I just
So
remember your face. Yeah,
the technical of like which exact network, and I mean, try all of them. It's all just the impressions are going to happen. People remember that. They don't know, I saw your TikTok. I saw your reel. They
yeah.
don't know which one it was. They just like,
No.
that was a few weeks ago.
And ultimately, what they did, like you said, they remember how they feel, and they remember who made them feel that way, which is you. So that has a massive impact on them. Yeah, it's really good. We spoke before a little bit about the podcast market and how congested and concentrated and that kind of stuff is. And there's a really, I don't know if it was depressing or it was certainly surprising about the amount of podcasts that don't make it first, the past the first 10 episodes. I think it was, I can't remember, it was like 90 something percent of podcasts don't make it past the first 10 episodes. So if anyone in the audience has got more than 10 episodes on their podcast, you're in a very, very small group of people, and well done. There's a reason for that. It's because it's bloody hard work, and it can be quite demeaning, and to see, I'm putting all this effort in, I'm getting maybe 5 downloads a week or something like that. Like that can scare anyone, and it can bring anyone's ego down. So with that in mind, what like creative ways have you thought of over the years, and how have you helped people and financial planners in general, like in specifically, how can basically what can they come up with, or what can they do that's creative in this space that doesn't just add them to that pile of the other 96% of podcasts that haven't worked?
Yes. I wouldn't look at the stats for a while. It's just like if you have a portfolio and you check it every night, a watched pot never boils. Don't worry about the stats or the downloads when you're just starting. Don't let yourself even look at it. Maybe in a few months when you look, you'll be pleasantly surprised. But it doesn't matter. If you have 100 people who are the right people who are listening, it's worthwhile. We have customers on Wealth Voice who have a small but loyal audience, whether it's just their like 15 clients that really want those updates from their advisor to hear that calming sound of their voice. That's a success. And if you look at it from a cost to acquire a customer perspective, like the average CAC, cost to acquire a client or a customer, is about $3,000 for a financial advisor. So if you spend X on your marketing and you get one customer or client out of that, oftentimes it pays for itself depending how many you get, how much you're spending. So you don't end up at the bottom of the pile. This was your question.
Yeah.
Maybe don't think about it as a pile, and just be trying to reach those right people. And it could be small, it could be large. It will grow over time if you do a good job and keep showing up. But don't just create the content, put it out there, set up the RSS feed and tweet, here's a link to episode 54 URL. You have to make it more engaging, and always think of it like, what is it? Who's it for? Why does it matter? What's the value they get from listening? So tease it out. And if you're actually offering something that's valuable, like financial advice, people are dying for an expert to guide them and just tell them, here's the deal. Yeah. They want that. They want that sort of almost a parental, strong leader type of voice. I think they're thirsty for it. So if you're doing that and you have some growth or you're getting good feedback, that's a great way to measure it. The other thing that happens that's kind of a tertiary benefit is once you start, let's say you do a mini pod, which I love the idea. I have a mini pod. It's under 5 minutes about once a week. You don't have to do a full-on interview. There's other formats like podcasts. The idea of what is a podcast and the container that we've thought of it for all these years is expanding and changing. Mini pods, audiograms, Wealth Voice briefings, audio Alexa briefings, all of these things. That will spark other ideas, or that will help you to become a more concise communicator. If you can distill a concept about the Secure Act or inflation or sequence risk into 2 minutes and just nail it, people are like, thank you for making that quick and clear. Great, I'm in. Give me more.
Yeah, no, I agree. And sorry, I didn't mean to kind of think of it as a pile as well when you were talking there.
No,
I agree that
this is everybody's like, well, but it's so competitive. Why should I even try?
Yeah, it's true though. You should.
You're not here to compete with Josh Brown, probably. Very few. So don't measure yourself like, I don't have 10,000 YouTube subscribers. It's not working.
Yeah, I think as well. I think there is a bit of a kind of mismatch between what people. What financial planners think their audience want to hear and what they actually do want to hear. So like, for instance, I'm helping a firm at the moment launch a podcast which is about the psychology of the brain throughout retirement, like what the brain goes through when you're at retirement. Now, if I was a client of theirs or a prospective client of theirs, that's amazing, because firstly, you think, oh well, they know what they're talking about, so I can obviously work with them about retirement because they know all about retirement. But also, you're establishing yourself as a thought leader, you're putting out great content. It's not that much work, and that is completely different, I think, to what a lot of what financial planners think that their clients want to hear. They don't want to hear about all the products, the investments, all that kind of stuff. They want to hear about how you can help them, and the things that they think about on a daily basis.
Definitely. The behavioral and emotional aspect is much more powerful to connect
Yeah.
with people. And this isn't rocket science. Like, you guys understand this. In ways, you're a therapist, you're a guide. Sure, you have that quantitative skill set and you are managing dollars, pounds, whatever.
Yeah.
But they don't want to hear another market update because they can just ask CNBC or Bloomberg for that. Like, let's run through what
Yeah.
happened in the market this week. How about this is how it might be making you feel? And here is another way to frame it. Or this might make you feel better about it. Or this is a really valuable tip. This is a question I get every week from clients. Or another really juicy one is how do we talk about money in a marriage with couples? This is such a taboo, messy subject that people don't handle very well because none of us were really taught how to talk about it in school.
No.
Wouldn't that have been useful? uh,
Yeah.
so I think tips that are just truly useful on a real life basis will resonate with people. If you could drop some like super helpful. This is how we've seen couples talk about money and actually have a fruitful conversation. Drop that on TikTok in a 1 minute video and be real. You'll get like 10,000 views in a day, maybe. Because
Yeah.
that's the way that's so cool about it. The TikTok thing, like, I'd say give it a shot.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? That on TikTok, for instance, you don't even need the audience to get the
Yeah.
audience. Like that, it's so random and it's so algorithm based that you don't even need followers to have an audience, which is just crazy. It is. Okay, there's another area that I think we're missing here, and you've kind of mentioned it a few times, which is the world of video. And I think actually during the pandemic, when we were all kind of forced to go with virtual meetings and stuff like that, I think that's actually helped this area a lot because people have been taking part in it and realizing how to harness the power of it. So again, tips from you, like what tips would you give our audience on growing an audience using things like video content and being on TikTok and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm. With video, you don't have to have really high production value. Don't feel overwhelmed. There's a lot of affordable solutions out there. If you don't want to edit the video yourself, you could hire somebody like a virtual assistant, go on Fiverr. There's services that make it pretty easy, but don't feel like the most important thing is to get the right camera and the perfect equipment and spend a lot of money. What's important is to just start and to be concise when you do it. This is the thing about these mediums, whether it's audio or video. We want to be natural and personable, and we might want to feel like we're supposed to chit chat at the beginning, like, so it's a beautiful day here in Austin and I went rollerblading this. They don't care. They're here to watch a video that has a title about a specific subject. Jump right into it. And you don't want to tease them, be like, at the end of this video I'll tell you the real solution. No, just give it right away. Again, the abundance mindset. I'm giving, giving, giving. That's what people want. So get to the point. I've seen on my YouTube channel, I have some videos with almost 70,000 views, and the main theme in all these comments is thank you for getting to the point and making it clear and concise. All the other videos were 3 times as long with half the information.
Yeah.
So that's a big
Yeah.
tip. I've seen it work.
It is. I think it's the impatience of our
So
probably
impatient.
generation now. It is. It actually fills me with a bit of fury when someone is just talking and not getting to the
You're like,
point.
skip, skip,
Yeah, and I
skip.
think that's why YouTube introduced the kind of thing where you can segment your videos to show people what you get to at different points. I use that so much. When that first came in, I thought I'm not going to use this because I want to watch the full video. But then actually now I very rarely watch a full video. I always like skip to the important parts of what I actually need to know.
Yes,
Um,
and that, Dan, that's another tip though for video. Like, if you put this full podcast conversation on YouTube, great. I would suggest everybody do the full one and then Joe Rogan style clip the 1 or 2 minute, maybe 3 minute juiciest highlight segments as a
mhm.
separate video. Those are going to end up getting more engagement. Same thing with audiograms. Clip the 60 seconds of the podcast that is the most engaging or juicy or helpful. When people engage with that, let's say they saw it on Instagram or Twitter or LinkedIn, they probably won't listen to the rest of the episode, which is fine. It just did its job.
Yeah. I think as well, like, so let's just put this in an example. For instance, when you said there about like get to the point, there's a reason why videos on TikTok go down so well is because there was a limit to them. I think was it 90 seconds the limit or something, and Instagram's limit is 90 seconds for reels as well. So do a 90-second video. Here's 5 ways that I've helped people retire in the last year or something like that, and then list them off very very quickly and tell people what to expect and just get to it. like that is a massively impactful thing, rather than having a full 10-minute video explaining all the juicy details, because no one cares. No one cares
Yes,
about those juicy
yes.
details.
And please don't do a video where it's like a big PowerPoint and you're not even
No.
in it, or you're like a teeny little. They
Yeah.
want to see you. You could show slides, but make those not the main focus. Like, pop them up when appropriate and for long enough on screen. Don't do it for 2 seconds. Like, they want to see it. Chart.
Yeah.
But you're
Yeah.
the star of it, and it's really, video is super powerful. Like, I love voice, I love video. I think all of it. It's just never been easier to do. Years ago, there were a few television networks that was where people got their media, and nobody had a voice. There was no internet or blogging. It's
Yeah.
incredible how you can reach people now for free,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah, I always say to people, like in the past, that we are running out of excuses not to do videos. I think the last remaining excuse now is simply just fear of getting in front of the camera, and that's it's a acceptable fear, and it's a reasonable fear. But I think we're at that point now where that's the last thing we've just got to get over.
You should be afraid of it, because if you're a human being, you know why we have public speaking as the number one fear from
Yeah, over
tribal
death.
times?
Yeah, yeah,
Death. Because if you were in a tribal society, the only time when you did what was the equivalent of public speaking to the whole group is when you were on trial to be banished because you had done something wrong and you were defending your life, like Albert Brooks. So
yeah,
it's going to make you nervous, but that's okay. And people are forgiving. They're rooting for you. They'll be, oh, she stumbled over her words. She's a little nervous. It's okay. Say, sorry, I'm a little nervous.
yeah.
And then take the breath and then just roll with it.
Personally, I actually love it when things go wrong on stage. It
Yeah.
kind of introduces that human element back, because it's not natural to stand up in front of, an audience at all. It's like you said, it's just not natural. So when something goes wrong, that brings that natural element back into it and says, okay, well, we're all on the same level here, because I'm human, you're human, we're going to make mistakes. I love it when things like that go wrong. They're amazing. They are really good.
Agreed.
Good stuff. Well, we've been talking now for 46 minutes. So I've been taking up far too much of your time when you've got other things to be getting onto. So we'll start to close down the podcast a little bit. There are two more questions that I ask everyone. And the first of them is an optimistic question. Well, it can be optimistic. We can go down a pessimistic view if you want to. But if we think of the world of finance and financial planning and stuff like that, 10, 20 years ago, it looks completely different well, not completely different, but quite different to how it looks today. Innovation and all sorts of different things have brought us forward. Where do you or how excited are you, or what are you excited to see in the next 10 years in our profession?
I'm excited to see a lot more accessibility and taking down walled gardens of esoteric terms and the information being shrouded and only for a select few. Everybody should have access to financial literacy. It should be taught more in schools. But I've seen, even in the years that I've been working with advisors and in this industry, there's so much more enthusiasm and really a democratization of the access of, like, this is information for everyone. We all should have financial planning and feel good about money. So the whole emotional concept of, like, this is why women don't want to talk about money because they were told they're not good at math or whatever. It's a man's arena. That stuff is going away. That's exciting. That's cool. There's a great wealth transfer underway where women are going to actually have trillions of dollars as spouses are passing away, and just kind of the way that all works. There's so much exciting stuff in the industry. I think there's a lot of really cool, smart, modern, positive people that want to share the information, help others. So it's never been more accessible, and the attitude, I think, is that it's the best it's ever been about it. It's just so much more transparency. So however you're going to share your voice to be part of that, there's many options. I think voice, video, social media, everything we've talked about today, these are great. But people want help with this. It's a beautiful profession to be able to give somebody wealth in every sense of the word.
Yeah. Well, that's nice. I love that. That's a tagline for financial planning. That's amazing. Your other tagline that you included in that answer there was share your voice as well. And I've only just realized that, like, that is a perfect tagline for you and for Wealth Voice.
I
It's
love
amazing.
that. I think it's taken. I've Googled.
Oh, it probably is.
Way trademarked.
Yeah,
I always have to come up with new stuff.
Yeah, that is true. And we also like to ask all of our guests for a book that has helped them in their career so far. Now, I I've changed this question because I know that like books are now so yesterday.
Aw,
So
don't say that.
I'm joking, but I mean, there are a lot of other ways to consume content nowadays, like audiobooks, for instance, but also films and all sorts of stuff. I get loads of things from that. What would you recommend our audience consume in this area?
It is a book, and I do a lot of reading, mostly audiobooks, but it's Alchemy by Rory Sutherland. Alchemy, the dark
Okay.
art and curious science of creating magic in brands, business, and life.
Yeah.
This book is so juicy. Rory Sutherland is brilliant. He's an Ogilvy ad guy. He's done a TED Talk. He looks at simple cases from advertising or marketing, like how does this train company get people to buy more tickets, and looking at it from a totally different perspective of what about riding the train is awful and it's not what you think. This book is so neat. It'll spark so many ideas for your business, for the way you communicate, the way you think about things. It's Alchemy. Like, just pick it up or pick up the audiobook. Rory Sutherland, amazing book.
Really, I've never actually read it, and it's so interesting you say that, Emily, because I actually know Rory's financial planner.
Oh, you do?
So yeah, so he's a lovely guy,
That's
fantastic
cool.
financial planner, and yeah, it's interesting we talk about it in that actual context that we're talking about it in now, because like you said, he's a brilliant marketer. I've never actually read that book though. I might actually have to
I
give
think
that
you'll
a
dig
go.
it, Dan.
Yeah, I think I definitely will. Good stuff. Well, that is all we've got time for today. But obviously, we just want to say a big thank you to you. But we do like to give the last word to our guests to say a big thank you for coming on the show as well. So, can you tell us where to find you, how to connect with you, and leave us with any last thoughts as well?
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for having me on. Uh, there are two things I want to share. One of them is if you are interested in the content that I've talked about or the ideas, there's a way to get a personalized video from me, and you could send this to a client, a boss, a coworker. It's called thinkersone.com. Thinkersone.com. Go check it out. I'm one of the thinkers on there. They have incredible bite-sized personalized video content that you can buy. You could buy a keynote. It's the new way to buy a speaker essentially. And there's no airplane and no contract. Add to cart, easy, super curated, incredible. Thinkers One. If you want to connect with me, find out more about Wealth Voice, my consultancy, my mini pod, it's all at emilybinder.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I've just realized that I've been saying your surname wrong the whole
It's
time as well.
it's a 50-50
So
chance. I don't care. It's all good.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to get it right now, though. So big thank you to Emily. So that was Emily Binder on the Next Gen Planners podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can share it, of course, with everyone on social media. And we are also on TikTok, like Emily has just said, although I must confess we're not taking it as seriously as we should be. You can listen to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, on YouTube, and also on our website, which is nextgenplanners.co.uk. And you'll find out more information about our amazing community and the things that those guys are getting up to. And we do have our big conference coming up in June as well in Manchester, and also with a virtual element, which will be really, really cool. So go and check that out. I should also say that I ask this at the end of every episode, but rates and reviews do really help us to grow the podcast. I'm sure Emily can definitely vouch for that. So please, if you get a chance, just leave us with a quick review. You don't even have to say anything. Just give us a 5 stars if you enjoy the podcast. You have no idea how much it helps to grow the podcast. But that's all we've got time for today. So I must say a big thank you to Emily, of course, for joining us on today's show. Thank you guys for listening as always, and we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.